Roger was a young, lively ranger who had just started working in a national park. He had loved nature and animals since he was a kid and always wanted this job. Each day, Roger looked forward to new adventures and helping the animals in the park. The park was known for having many animals, especially African lions. With about 30 lions living there, Roger felt a special duty to make sure they were healthy and happy. One early morning, Roger set off in his jeep to patrol the park's territory. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in gentle pink and orange hues. The air was fresh and cool, filled with the scent of blooming plants. Roger's route passed through a rocky area where one of the lion prides lived. These rocks were the perfect place for the lions. They provided shelter, shaded resting spots, and lookout points for hunting. As Roger got closer to the rocks, he saw a group of young lions playing near the edge of a cliff. Their jumping and chasing made him smile, but also worry. He knew how dangerous this spot could be for inexperienced animals. Suddenly, Roger saw part of the rock starting to crumble under the lion's paws. His heart raced as he realized the danger. He hoped the adult lions would move the cubs away from the edge. One older lion noticed the danger and began to roar loudly, trying to get the young ones to move back. But the playful cubs didn't listen right away. Seeing that the cubs were not moving, the older lion charged toward them. His roar finally got their attention, and they started to move away from the edge. But it was too late. The weight of the adult lion caused the cliff to give way, and a large piece of rock broke off, taking one of the young lions with it. Roger watched in horror as the lion slipped off the cliff. Thankfully, the lion managed to grab onto a rock ledge with its claws, but it was in a very dangerous position. Without help, the lion wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Roger quickly grabbed his radio and called for backup, explaining the situation and requesting immediate help. Roger then drove his jeep to the cliff to clear the area for the rescue. He honked loudly and maneuvered the jeep to scare the other lions away. Luckily, his plan worked, and the pride began to move away, clearing the area around the cliff. Once the last lion disappeared from view, Roger jumped out of the vehicle and ran to the edge of the cliff. Looking over the edge, the ranger saw the lion desperately clinging to the rock. The animal made pitiful sounds, its claws slipping on the stone. Roger understood that he only had a few minutes before the lion's strength would give out. Quickly returning to the jeep, Roger took out strong ropes from the trunk. He started unrolling them, figuring out how best to tie the lion to pull it up. At that moment, Roger heard the long-awaited sound of approaching jeeps. His colleagues had arrived to help. Wasting no time, the rangers immediately got to work, following Roger's instructions. Together, they created a system of ropes and began lowering one end down to the stranded lion. Roger, as the initiator of the rescue operation, took on the most dangerous part, tying the lion with ropes. Carefully approaching the edge of the cliff, Roger began to lower the rope. The lion seemed to understand that people were trying to help it and did not show any aggression. Its amber eyes were full of fear and hope. With great difficulty, Roger managed to loop the rope around the lion's body. The animal instinctively jerked, almost falling into the abyss, but the ranger spoke to it soothingly. Amazingly, the lion seemed to understand and calmed down, allowing him to finish tying the rope. When the lion was securely fastened, Roger gave the signal to the other rangers to start lifting. It was a difficult task. The weight of the adult lion was immense, and the unstable surface of the cliff made the work even harder. The rangers pulled with all their might, slowly lifting the lion up. Roger encouraged his colleagues and the lion, understanding that the animal's life depended on their coordinated efforts. Every inch was hard-won, but they did not give up. Finally, after several grueling minutes, the lion's face appeared over the edge of the cliff. A few more pulls and the animal was on solid ground, exhausted but alive. The lion lay breathing heavily on the grass. The rangers stepped back, giving the lion more space, all except Roger. The young man, driven by some inner impulse, stayed close to the animal. He slowly knelt beside the lion, looking directly into its eyes. In that moment, a spark of understanding seemed to pass between the man and the beast. The lion showed no aggression but looked at Roger with something resembling gratitude. The ranger carefully began removing the ropes, and the lion allowed him to do so, not moving from its spot. When the last rope was removed, the lion slowly rose to its feet. It looked at Roger one more time, gave a quiet roar that sounded more like a purr, and slowly walked away towards its pride. The rangers watched this scene in awe, amazed by the bond that had formed between the man and the wild animal. After the rescue, life in the park went back to normal. Roger kept working but often thought about the lion he had saved. He hoped to see it again but knew it was unlikely. Months went by and the monsoon season came, bringing heavy rains and the risk of floods and landslides. One morning during a particularly heavy rainstorm, Roger was patrolling his area. The rain was so intense that his Jeep's wipers struggled to keep up. He drove slowly, looking carefully for any animals in trouble. Suddenly, Roger saw a large tree that had fallen. He stopped the Jeep and got out into the pouring rain, pulling his jacket's hood over his head. He approached the tree, thinking about how many animals might have lost their homes because of it. He was so focused on this thought that he didn't immediately hear the growing roar of the landslide. When he did notice, it was too late. He turned around to see a huge wall of mud and debris rushing toward him. In a panic, Roger tried to run back to the Jeep but realized he wouldn't make it. The only place to hide was the fallen tree. He ran toward it and climbed as high as he could, gripping the trunk tightly. Moments later, the wave of mud hit, and Roger felt its force trying to pull him away. He held onto the tree with all his strength, hoping he could survive the onslaught. When the first wave subsided, Roger found himself buried under a thick layer of mud and debris. Fortunately, a small pocket of air had formed around his face, allowing him to breathe, but the ranger knew his situation was still extremely dangerous. Roger tried to move but found himself almost completely immobilized. The dense layer of mud restrained his movements. The ranger tried to stay calm, knowing that panic would only make things worse. Time passed, and Roger began to worry. He knew his colleagues would be busy dealing with the landslide's aftermath throughout the park. How long would it take before someone noticed his absence and started looking for him? Suddenly, Roger heard a noise above him. He saw some movement through a small gap and thought he might have seen a flash of sand-colored fur, but he decided it was just his imagination. How could a lion be here? The noise got louder, and Roger felt something heavy moving over the mud above him. He held his breath, worried that another landslide might bury him completely. But instead of more mud, the pressure on him started to ease. Someone or something was clearing the debris. Roger heard a roar that made him shiver, followed by human voices. He tried to shout, but his voice was too weak. Luckily, the rescuers seemed to know where to find him. Soon he saw light and took a deep breath of fresh air. When Roger was finally pulled out, he was amazed to see a huge lion covered in mud standing next to the rangers. It was the same lion he had saved on a cliff months before. The lion had somehow found him and started digging, which made the rangers come to help. Roger couldn't believe it. The lion he had helped had now rescued him in return. It was an incredible act of gratitude and maybe the start of a special bond between them. After this, the lion didn't avoid people in the park anymore. Roger often saw it during his patrols, and they would share a look of mutual respect. The story of this remarkable rescue spread through the park and beyond, showing how kindness can bridge gaps even between different species. People were deeply moved and began to see the relationship between humans and wild animals in a new light.